Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Hathaway. I'm the editor-in-chief of National Fisherman magazine, and I have with me here today Catherine Carscallen, who is the director of commercial fishermen for Bristol Bay. She's a third-generation fisherman in Bristol Bay, and she's also a resident of Dillingham, Alaska, which is in Bristol Bay. So welcome, Catherine, and can you just first give us an explanation of your organization and what you're working on?
Thanks. Thank you for doing this, and it's great to see your face, even if it's over Zoom. So you're right. I am the director of commercial fishermen for Bristol Bay, and we're a group that organized about 8 years ago in response to the threat of the Pebble Mine and kind of the lack of organization amongst the commercial fishing industry. So we're a coalition of commercial fishermen, businesses, and other associations across the nation who came together on the belief that the proposed Pebble Mine poses an unacceptable risk to our fishery. And you're right, I'm based out of Dillingham, and I'm also a commercial fisherman.
Okay, thanks. So today is April 9th, and I understand that this week processing capacity in Bristol Bay is already starting to pick up a little bit with people traveling directly to the region from outside of the state. And this week also, the Dillingham City Council and the Choyun Tribal Council have requested that the governor consider canceling the fishing season for this year because of the COVID-19 outbreak. However, the Bristol Bay Regional Seafood Development Association and other tribal groups are still currently working to find solutions that would do a good job, ideally, of protecting local residents from the outbreak and still allow the season to continue, the sockeye salmon fishing season to continue. So as a Dillingham resident, what would you say are your top concerns about the upcoming season, and what are you hearing?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say everyone's concerned, and in reality, everyone obviously wants a fishery. As a Dillingham resident, Bristol Bay resident, and a fisherman, our local economy is completely tied to the fishery, always has been. So any consideration of hasn't been taken lightly by any organization. I'm inspired that since the beginning, since this threat came about, and since the governor of Alaska issued these stay-at-home warnings and quarantine mandates, the processors, the commercial fishing organizations, local tribes, and city, everybody really has come together and have been holding meetings, daily, multi-day meetings on how to address this and how to mitigate it. But the biggest concern here really, and like any rural area, and I think all over the country, is our medical capacity. We're very rural. We have a small hospital that, under normal circumstances gets completely overloaded in the summer, and like everywhere, they're already running short on personal protection gear, and there's just a lot of anxiety about facing an increase in our population of double, triple, even quadruple in certain regions during this fishing season. So I think the resolutions that have gone out asking for consideration of stopping the fishing season, I personally think everything has to be on the table. I think we have to accept that this is the most unique and scary circumstance we've seen in quite a while, and I'm really hoping everyone can just keep working together and work towards a solution that works.
Yeah, well, we will support you in that in that endeavor. It is 15,000 people that come to the region for processing and fishing and tendering. And that's in addition to, is it 7,000 residents regionally? Yeah.
Yeah, there's about 24 year-round residents here in Dillingham. I think I might get this number wrong, but around 1,500 over on Naknek side, and then there's communities all around the region that support the fishery as well. So it's a huge influx of people. The plans that everyone is working on are really aimed at not spreading the virus in the community, but also keeping workers safe. And it's a monumental task to figure this out. And I'd put it lightly to say that we're all concerned, and there's a lot of anxiety, and tensions are starting to run high. So
Yeah, I believe it. So speaking of monumental tasks and high anxiety and tensions, we're going to move on to Pebble Mine. Our favorite perennial topic. So in early March this year, a coalition of fisheries stakeholders attended a federal hearing, and you were there, on a lawsuit filed against EPA for withdrawing its proposed Clean Water Act protections for the region, which would have created a roadblock to construction of Pebble Mine as proposed. The hearing was regarding potential dismissal of the lawsuit. Can you give us an update on that? I know you were expecting to hear at the end of the month, but there have been some delays.
Yeah, so Judge Gleason is overseeing the motion or the suit, and there was a stay put on basically anything going on in the federal court system that doesn't relate to criminal matters or anything that would require a speedy trial. There was a pause put on all those cases, and I actually just heard this morning that pause was lifted on our case. So we're expecting to see, like you said, Judge Gleason had March 31st as her deadline to put out our answer to the request, and I think any day now, I think we could probably expect to see a ruling. And this is just what she's considering right now, is just a decision on whether or not this will go forward. This will actually go forward to debating the merits of the case. So I'm hopeful. I think, like you said, I was there for the arguments, and I mean, personally, it seemed like there's reason to allow this to go forward, and we're hopeful that we get a positive decision. But even, I think it's important to remember that this is an administrative call here. So even if the case were thrown out, it doesn't take away from the merits of the case. It's an administrative decision.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for the update. We'll be looking for more info on that in the coming days. I also understand the Army Corps permitting process has continued unabated in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic chaos. Is that accurate? Can you give us some updates that you've been getting from the Corps of Engineers? I know you're still meeting with them regularly on phone calls and corresponding with them, right?
Somewhat. It's accurate to say they're going full speed ahead, and it's honestly unbelievable to me that that's the case, with everything that's going on, and everyone's energy so focused on, locally focused on how do we keep people safe during this time. The whole world's facing right ahead with their timeline that was already too short. We already had requests to extend the timeline and ask for a more rigorous permitting process. So it's truly unbelievable to me that they haven't. We've put in multiple letters requesting an extension of the process or an all-out pause at this point. And the response we've received back is, thank you for your concerns. The only extension I've seen was in response to a letter from all the BBs and fishing groups, and they extended the timeline for the cooperating agencies who are working with them on this final EIS, extended it by 1 week, just days before the deadline already happened. So it's really just lip service. As far as meeting with the Corps, there are still cooperating agency and government to government consultations going on with the groups that are involved, with the development of this EIS. And I'm not personally involved in any of those, but it's really hard for me to imagine how you can really truly have fair and transparent cooperation and a transparent permitting process with everybody on lockdown, everybody trying to communicate. I think the feed might be pausing here, which is, it just goes to show we don't have, you can't expect a normal permitting process to take place during these times, especially if you want meaningful cooperation from groups and tribes who are dealing with an absolute human health crisis.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everything is a new normal, and it kind of makes sense to try to reset. That's what everyone's doing, in my experience.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about why you're pushing for more detailed information in the EIS and what that looks like? Because I know there's been a lot of talk about inaccurate data in the EIS, and I'll include links to that below if you're reading this or watching this on our website. But can you just talk a little bit about what it might look like to incorporate that, like, better data into the EIS?
Yeah, so I guess the long answer to that question is in the agency comments, in the cooperating agency comments, Environmental Protection Agency, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, all the agencies that took a look at the first draft of the EAIS put in very detailed comments on how and why it was lacking, and what it might take to make the EAIS really representative of what the risks of the mine would be. Some of the key elements that are missing are fishery data, and potential impacts of the road corridor. Since the first draft of the mining proposal went in to now, they've changed many elements of it, including the road corridor. So there actually isn't any field data in some of the areas, and some of the data that they've used is very lacking. So, actual on the ground research and data collection would be needed. And we've even heard out of the Alaska Department of Fish and Game that to go through the state permitting process, they absolutely will need to gather that data. So pushing through for this federal permit, really, it doesn't even make sense, because under a normal process they would have applied for this federal permit and state permits at the same time. And it's pretty ingenuous, in my opinion, that they've just put in for this federal permit knowing that they don't even have the data they need to get through the state permitting process. And then one of the biggest things is there is no tailings dam failure model included, and EPA, along with just about everyone else, has pointed that out as a major flaw. So that needs to be included, and an analysis of what mine expansion would look like. I think it's also really important to remember that we've been calling this their small mine plan. It's not a small mine. By any measure, it would still be a huge mine, but it's small when you compare it to the amount of ore that's there, and what a mine would look like if you mined all the mineable resource. And it's hard to believe that you wouldn't once you got started. So including what the impacts of mining the whole resource is really the only genuine way to look at the potential impacts, and that is not part of this EIS process.
Right. So a lot of work to be done on both sides.
Yeah, under normal circumstances there was a lot of work to be done, and this process was being railroaded through, and it was really an unacceptable timeline. And then to pile that on top of what's going on now, it makes us wonder. And it's hard for me to understand what is so urgent about pushing this process on their stated timeline that was already a record fast timeline, and with everything that's on, what is so urgent about pushing it now, when really in other parts of the country Army Corps is building field hospitals, and we're facing a potential fishing season that could risk the populations of our region, and I could see Army Corps playing a role there. We could use a field hospital, we could use some of that help, and instead I don't know why Alaska Army Corps would make this such a priority.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent point. And I just want to note for anyone who's watching, if this is breaking up at all, it's because Bristol Bay is a very remote region of the country, and our connection might not be ideal. It's also a really sort of wet and soggy, cold, rainy day here in Maine. So it's pretty miraculous, I think, actually, that we're having this conversation at all. And I'm really glad that we can do it, but I just wanted to give a heads up. If anything's breaking up, it's probably not your internet, it's our video. So don't worry about that. But from my end, even with a few breakups, it's coming through loud and clear. That there's a lot of work to be done. So can you tell us, Catherine, where fishermen and other stakeholders could go to get information on the project, and to give their input if that opportunity arises again?
Yeah, we can stick some links down below. Like you said, our Commercial Fisherman for Bristol Bay's Facebook page is fishermanforbristolbay.org. Like I said, there's a webpage that the Bristol Bay Native Corporation has set up it's sort of coalesced all the agency concerns and what potential mitigation would be. That's a really good resource with a long URL, so we can just put that down below. And then Army Corps has their own website set up, and following the Facebook pages and keeping up to date with everything that's going on here. A lot of pretty much everyone is focused on this COVID situation and how to figure out how to have a fishery, but we've made a commitment to not step back on our work on Pebble, because Pebble isn't stepping back. They're going, in the beginning we thought, well, we can't even to ask people to write letters or call their senators or focus on this when such a crisis is happening seemed a little tone deaf, or like maybe we should take a step back from our work and just put fun things out there like coloring pages. And so we're putting that kind of stuff out there on Facebook, but at the same time, with the Pebble partnership going full steam ahead in spite of this situation, and with Army Corps not slowing down, we really can't afford to take a pause either. So there's a take action up on the fishermanforbristolbay.org website with letters going to your senators, asking them to ask for this process to be paused. And I would really recommend just picking up the phone and giving them a call, or sending a letter.
Great. I mean, that's something useful that people can do. They're home for the most
Yeah.
part for now. Okay, so last week also, speaking of Pebble Mine, the Pebble Mine supportive Alaska governor appointed Abe Williams to the State Board of Fisheries, which is a state management group, to replace Fritz Johnson, who's a widely respected Bristol Bay fisherman. Abe Williams is also a Bristol Bay commercial fisherman who's been working for the Pebble Partnership, who's on the payroll as far as I know, and also long been an advocate of the project. So what concerns do Bay fishermen have about this appointment, and what concerns do you have as a Dillingham resident and a multi-generational Bristol Bay fisherman?
Yeah, so I have a lot of concerns with the appointment. My main concern is that, under a normal Board of Fish, and for people who don't know, the Board of Fisheries manages or makes allocative decisions about fisheries issues all around the state. It's a 9-member board, and those members are charged with not only being representative of their stakeholder group, so there's representatives there from the commercial fishing industry, the sport fishing industry, subsistence, and science-based research. So that it's a highly respected position, and it's very important to have people there who really not only represent their stakeholder group, but kind of represent the values of fisheries as a whole. And it goes under a normal process. It goes through a rigorous legislative vetting process, where the governor will forward names and the legislature will take public testimony and consider the appointments. And because of this COVID situation, the legislature has closed up shop, and we're kind of skipping that step. And so it just seems very inappropriate to put what I think is probably the most controversial name I've seen for fisheries, with Abe's relationship with the Pebble Partnership and his long history. In spite of, yes, he is a fisherman, but he has been advocating on behalf of the Pebble Mine for, I think, nearly a decade. And to give him that platform while we know that this mining company is pushing hard to get a permit and get an investor in this coming year, and by the time it comes around to actually vetting this appointment, you'll have given somebody the pulpit, I guess, as a Board of Fish member. And it's hugely inappropriate in my mind. It would have been a much more appropriate choice for the governor to just keep the board as it is. There is no reason to remove Fritz Johnson. Like you said, he's a longtime fisherman. He's a rural resident. The makeup of that board is important to have representation of every corner of the state, because they're making decisions on every corner of the state. And this would take away a rural-based Bristol Bay seat, which Bristol Bay's actually maintained a seat, aside from a really short stint, for I think almost 40 years. And to take away that seat, Abe's located in Anchorage.
Yeah, I think he's from Naknek, right? But he's
from Naknek originally, and he does fish Bristol Bay. But yeah, we would be down to, that would mean Petersburg is the only rural area on a 9-member seat, and that's, even that would have been egregious, besides the entire relationship with Pebble.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't realized that, but yeah, for Petersburg to be the only rural community represented on a fisheries board in the state of Alaska is pretty wild. So I did see that the governor's appointments are temporarily delayed, potentially, so that the legislature can convene to hold public comment, but the provision also does allow the legislature to go ahead and approve appointees without convening. So what are you hearing? What do you think the chances are that they'll delay until they can convene and hear public comment?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know what they'll do, but I guess my plea to any Alaska resident who's tracking this would be to give your representative a call, just and ask for a normal public process. I think that's what we deserve is these appointments really truly matter, and to skip the public testimony opportunity is, I know everything's crazy right now, but if we're going to skip that, it would have made a lot more sense to just keep the board that's already been vetted in place rather than slipping in appointments that
Right. Emergency
the
board.
public out. So that, I mean, that was, and I'll probably be picking up the phone and making some calls. It's just asking that public testimony be held.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Catherine. That's all I have for today, but I wanted to throw it back to you in case you have any closing comments or thoughts, anything else that you wanted to add.
Yeah, I think this is just, it's a crazy stressful time, and I think if everybody can have, just on a personal note, like your first question, as a Bristol Bay resident and a fisherman as well, I'm struggling every day, and I think we all are, with weighing out what it means to protect human health while still having a healthy economy. And I think just asking everyone to be patient and just collaborative so we can come to a solution. I think I hate the idea of us fighting amongst ourselves over this, and I know some of that is inevitable, but the reality is this is a threat of a virus that the entire world is struggling with, and none of this is easy. So I think whatever happens this summer, it's, our expectations have to, we have to just keep that in mind, that this isn't any one individual's fault. It's a situation that, frankly, I believe our country wasn't prepared for, and it's something that maybe we didn't know we needed to be prepared for. But that's just on a personal note.
Yeah.
And then as far as Pebble, anything we can do, I feel like we're facing two immediate threats, just this huge human health threat, and then this looming threat of the Pebble mine that doesn't seem to go away. And I don't know, just staying unified on that, I think, is important too.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. Thanks for keeping us all plugged in and together. It's been fun watching what you put out, and I appreciate National Fisherman a lot on this.
Thanks so much. Well, we appreciate you, and we wouldn't be eating salmon year round if it weren't for you. So thanks again, and we wish you the best. We'll keep in touch.